Why is this such a business scheme for music distributors? Something happens, we lock you out. We don't have enough customer service support to actually respond to you. We're just gonna take your royalties. I have become the attorney who fights music distributors. My law firm, which is Delgado Entertainment Law, we have just been getting flooded with just requests for help. And this was happening before I kind of took on TuneCore. I had been fighting with TuneCore for several months before I kind of brought it to this platform. I'm gonna be talking about one of the other cases that we are handling and that I've gotten permission from the client to kind of speak of, which has to do with DistroKid. The TuneCore situation was just, talk about contentious and hostile, and it even got to the point where they started to threaten me because I was speaking about the situation, showing the evidence and all this stuff, and it opened the door for us to, as a community, like as a music business community, to talk about what these music distributors do, which then got me super interested in looking at the terms of service for all these major distributors, and I'm still doing it. So we turned our attention to DistroKid recently and went through their terms of service. One of the cases that we've been working on is very similar to what we dealt with TuneCore, which is there's alleged fraud of some kind, there's a claim of some kind, which might be copyright infringement. We think that there is some kind of unauthorized sampling. We think that there are fake streams happening. You are botting, you are paying for all the fakery. And so with the TuneCore situation, they had kicked our client off the platform, locked him out, took his royalties and said, hey, you forfeited your royalties. And so we go digging into the terms of service. And that's in fact what they say. They're like, if there's even a claim of impropriety, that we're going to be able to take these actions and forfeit your royalties. In the TuneCore terms of service, it goes, we can not only forfeit your royalties, but we can give your royalties to a third party. Focusing more on DistroKid, we had the same situation come up. And this particular client is a producer and produces a certain type of music that you sleep to. He ended up putting up paid ads, and the paid ads would then direct traffic to the sleepy time music, and then people listen to it while they sleep. A lot of people do this kind of thing, and it can be very lucrative because you have people listening to your stuff for a long period of time while they sleep. But unfortunately for the client, this meant that the music got flagged. The DSP, so Spotify, flagged it. We see like there's this huge, burst of traffic. And so we think these are fake plays, and they weren't. But, some things happen, and there's automated systems and, stuff happening. So the client had tried to get into touch with DistroKid and been unsuccessful, which seems to be a common theme, all right, with these big distributors, and just, complaints of poor customer service and not getting help and all that. And then when the amount of royalties that are stuck in an account that the client is now locked out of are enough that the client goes, hey, Krystle, I'm going to hire you to send a demand letter and get the money. So TuneCore, it was like in the tens of thousands of dollars. In this case, it was a similar type of situation. There's a lot of money. That's just a little background on like what kind of was going on with TuneCore and just battling, and then, moving over to now DistroKid. So to recap on our discussion on DistroKid's terms of service, we go, whereas in TuneCore's terms of service, like 30% of their contract, of which you guys sign when you put your music on these platforms, around 30% of what we went through together was all about explaining how TuneCore can withhold your royalties, terminate your account, even pursue things like repayment. And they're like, even for money we paid you before, we're going to go after, and we want you to like repay us that money we gave you, right? And so they were just obviously very heavily favored to TuneCore, and my position was that unlawful, especially with the language in regards to just a total forfeiture of all your royalties if they even get a claim of something. We then looked at DistroKid and we go, all right, we want to be totally fair about this. And so we go through some of the highlights where DistroKid's term was non-exclusive. We kind of liked that because that meant that you could put your music on different platforms. It was like a 1-year term as far as you having your music and giving rights to distribute it on multiple DSPs and all stuff. It was more like a standard contract. So over here we had TuneCore, which was like, hey, we can take your money with like anything that possibly happens. And that's like a big part of their contract. And then at least with DistroKid, they were talking more about, hey, just you're giving us rights. You promise that you own the music. So, as we went through, we're like, all right, so this is a little bit more reasonable. But the thing that we really wanted to look at was the stuff having to do with your royalties. So we want to make sure specifically that, does DistroKid do the same thing, right? Are they just going to forfeit your royalties? Are they just going to take it if they just so choose? Let me pull up specifically from the terms of service that we looked at, and you guys are welcome to go and watch the entire video. And I have provided a download for the terms of service that I actually highlighted if you wanted to download and actually look at them. So this is section 7. And they talk about, of course, in consideration of you having your music on our platform, we're going to pay you 100% of your royalties. So you're just paying us, whatever the annual fee is, right? So these talk, a lot about the general, like, there would be fees, right? Spotify might take a little fee. So we weren't concerned about like this general stuff. Okay. So we went to then all the way down, because we started, it's like 7A and then it's like B, C, D, and we went all the way down to G. And this is the stuff that we really highlighted, which was, if we, DistroKid, receive a claim or notice or otherwise reasonably suspect that any of your recordings, so your music, or materials, or your use of our site or services breaches any agreement, infringes any third-party rights, violates this agreement or any law, rule, or regulation, that there is a dispute regarding the recording or materials, so basically like anything is going on, or that your activities involve misrepresentations, misconduct, deception, fraud, or other inappropriate conduct, then in addition to any other available remedies, this is what they can do. Okay, so now we're in the blue. We may suspend or terminate the distribution of your music and or this agreement and or withhold payment of your royalties. Okay, specifically withhold payment of monies to you in an amount reasonably attributable in our discretion to such music, materials. Okay, so when we had gone through this, we go, all right, so what they're saying is that we can withhold your royalties up to an amount that is reasonably necessary, and we may deduct this to pay our attorney's fees, right? Our actual damages. And, the thing that we've said, to just be fair to music distributors, is that, especially with Spotify is now imposing sanctions for things like fake streams. This is for artists, this is for record labels, this is for distributors. And so we go, well, under the law, and this was in the TuneCore situation, under New York law, which is what the TuneCore contract is governed by, you can absolutely say, I'm going to take royalties to pay myself back for real damages that I suffer because of what you did. And so we go, well, in the TuneCore situation, if you are going to say that you got sanctioned, right, because of alleged fake streaming, fine. Like, I'm not even going to argue with that as an attorney, right? But the problem in that situation was that they didn't prove anything. They didn't provide actual evidence. They just, copied and pasted stuff. They just made statements. And in fact, everything was just verbal up until that point. And they were calling our client a scumbag, literally their words, not mine. So it just went this just weird route. Coming back to then DistroKid, we go, look, we're really concerned about the kind of free-for-all that these music distributors seem to have when it comes to your royalties. So let's finish this. They go, we reserve the right to, in the instance of any and all claims, we can resolve to our reasonable satisfaction, and we may deduct from your payments our related attorney's fees and legal costs in connection. And then here's the final sentence, because we didn't mind any of that up until now. And then they say, you will forfeit any monies that are attributable to your fraud, infringement, or other illegal activity. So they do have a final catch-all in here. And, for me, as a litigation attorney who will live and die by the words of these contracts, none of these words are defined as far as fraud, infringement, illegal activity. What does that mean? So what I don't like about that is that it's just so open-ended that it is open for interpretation. It just gives at least an avenue for DistroKid to forfeit royalties. Now, let me be clear. The terms of service for TuneCore and the terms of service for DistroKid are wildly different, in my opinion. TuneCore terms are extremely aggressive, and they have language that is, for example, they talk about, hey, while we have your royalties, we're going to put it in an interest-bearing account. They literally say in their contract that they're going to make money from your money, and you give up the right to the interest that is made on your money. And it's just stuff like that where I'm just like, that just makes me feel terrible. I just don't like that. Okay, so that's TuneCore. So over here on DistroKid, we go, look, generally speaking, they're talking about, one for one on damages and all this stuff, but they do have that sentence saying you do forfeit your monies attributable to your fraud, your infringement, your legal activities. Are they saying they're going to come and like collect your, the back pay that you got, which is what TuneCore does? No. But anyway, so we're keeping that all in mind with this current situation. So client's making sleepy time music, and client is getting a lot of streams, a lot of action, a lot of interest, and so he gets shut down. And they go, this is, streaming fraud, you're violating everything, we're locking you out of the account, and then they just stopped responding to him. So he hires me. And as you guys know, what I do is I send a demand letter. And I go, dear DistroKid, here's what happened. Our client's been trying to get in touch with you. Your customer support is not doing a very good job. So therefore, we are having to send this ourselves. So we usually send a pretty aggressive letter because, quite frankly, my intention is to try and get this done on the first pass for my clients, meaning I don't want you to keep spending money of I need to keep going back and forth and this whole thing. I would love to just send the letter and then get the stuff done with whatever needs to happen, which might be a release of royalties. It might be a reinstatement of your music or a reinstatement of your account. Anyway, so let me show you. I have redacted the client's name, as you guys know, that I do. And so this is a part of the letter that I sent. And so this is, we do a big letter and it's here's the factual background, but this is section 2, which talks about here are the claims. And I want you guys to understand this. In the claims against DistroKid, we stated conversion occurs when a defendant intentionally interferes with the plaintiff's right to possession of personal property so significant that the defendant should pay the value of the property. So conversion is under tort law, under a civil claim. It's the same thing as saying theft. So instead of saying theft, which would be a criminal thing, we're in civil litigation. So we go, conversion is when you intentionally interfere with someone's right of possession of property. And in this case, it's monies. And we go, these are not your monies. These are our clients' monies. And so you have to release them under this legal theory. Here, while our client, redacted, recognizes that pursuant to its distribution agreement with DistroKid held the right to terminate the agreement at any time, right? So we're just saying, we understand that you can kick our client off your platform anytime. We don't have a problem with that. However, DistroKid intentionally interfered with our client's right to possession of the royalties associated with the client's account. The client has been damaged by this unlawful withholding of its royalties and is therefore entitled to recover damages, both compensatory and punitive. All right, so those are just, fancy words for just saying, look, what you did, we are not only going to go after you for getting the actual royalties, but now our client had to pay an attorney. Attorneys aren't cheap. And so we can get additional damages under these legal theories. But right now, guys, we're at the letter stage, okay? So we're saying, here's all the stuff that we potentially can bring or do in reaction to what you did. Okay, so then we explain this. If, following receipt of this letter, DistroKid continues to withhold rightful possession of the royalties, DistroKid's actions, including but not limited to those described above, demonstrate that DistroKid's conduct is motivated by ill will. So basically we're saying, if after you get this letter and we're like, hey, we think that this was just a little glitch. We think that your automated system made a mistake. We think that Spotify made a mistake. And so we're just giving you an opportunity to fix this. If you don't fix this, it's not going to go well for you. And for the purpose of consciously disregarding the substantial risk of loss by entitling our client to seek punitive damages. Additionally, if forced to take additional legal action against DistroKid, our client has claims for breach of contract. And so these are the other legal theories that we have. We're like, you breached the contract, all right? You were unjustly enriched, meaning you took the money, right? You interfered with our client's business opportunity because you guys who are legitimately trying to do this as real musicians, real producers, I'm be your own record label. I mean it. And this is a business. And so, when these companies come in and just shut you down, you can't collect your royalties anymore. Guess what? Weeks go by, months go by. And so if you had something that was lucrative and getting traffic and getting, it's just, I can understand my client's frustration. And I share that frustration a lot. Okay, so, basically you're interfering. This is not an exhaustive list of our client's claims and does not include our client's consequential damages, such as the attorney's fees incurred, related to drafting this letter and litigation hold. Okay, so that's a little piece of the letter that we sent. Top Music Attorney is your #1 legal resource for artists, producers, and record labels. Get contract templates, one-on-one legal advice, free masterclasses, and everything you need for your music business. Go to topmusicattorney.com. In the instance of TuneCore, we did a similar thing because, like I said, we do this kind of stuff all the time. TuneCore, right out the gate, got on the phone and was like, absolutely, we're not releasing anything. We don't care. And I was just like floored because I've done this so often and I've dealt with a lot of distributors. And this was actually the first time dealing with TuneCore. Like, whoa, that's all I can say. And we kind of started to play the game with them a little bit because, we were making legal arguments. We're like, under the law, under the applicable language in, New York law, you can't do this. And they pretty much said like they don't care. And so, we ended up coming back and we go, look, it seems like this is kind of personal. This seems like this is like this ethical issue for you guys, and that you don't think our artist is like a real artist and you think his music sucks. Don't even get me started on that. And so I'm like, if we can prove he's a real artist, will you release his royalties? And TuneCore led us to believe that they would. And so, we spent weeks just, compiling all the information, screenshots, links to social, and just showing our very legitimate artist, which why are we having to prove anyone is legitimate and what does that even mean? But anyway, we went through it just because we're like, dude, what? At the end of the day, we'll do creative lawyering just to try to get a good result for our clients. Anyways, after all of that, TuneCore still came back and they just said no. And literally just repeated themselves on the whole, music sucks, not a real artist, and then just affirming the whole they thought that there was fake plays. And what I shared on the other TuneCore videos and with TuneCore directly is I go, even if that's the case, even if you're 100% right, you haven't shown any evidence to prove what you're saying, but even if you're right and my client is a big fakester and did pay for fake plays, which apparently makes him a terrible person, right? Even if he did that. I go, under the law, you have zero damages. So you don't get to come in and just be like, I'm going to take tens of thousands of dollars for what you did on Spotify. I'm like, that's unlawful. So that was just a losing battle. And our stake in the sand today is still that TuneCore needs to revise its terms of service because they are so unbelievably unfair, one-sided, and artists and producers do not have any way to address the contract itself. And you can be like, well, they just go to a different, music distributor. Okay. Yes, they can, but they also don't know what they're signing, and that's my problem. I go, I'm here to tell you what this stuff says, but there's a lot of people out there who are not going to watch my little video, right? So, in the case with DistroKid, we come in hot. We go, we're going to smack you with the law of the book of the land, and you better release our client's funds. You better reinstate the music and all this stuff. And in this case, we won. In this case, we got all the monies released. We got the music reinstated, and it was a, kind of one and done situation, which is what these should be. As a music attorney, the TuneCore situation was such a unique kind of thing over many months and many letters and so many phone calls and all this stuff versus really what this should be, which is you need to do your own due diligence. But even beyond that, like, we need to have a conversation about the law. It should be, this is the state of the law. You don't just get to take artist royalties. And like, why is this such a business scheme for music distributors? Like, I'm really outraged by music distributors not only making money off of my clients' money because apparently they have them in like interest-bearing accounts and all that, but it's like this whole business model of something happens, we lock you out, we don't have enough customer service support to actually respond to you or to tell you what's going on or give you an opportunity to try to like appeal what happened. We're just going to take your royalties. And I really fundamentally have a big problem with that. So let me go back to then DistroKid's, terms of service and my general thoughts with DistroKid. And I generally found DistroKid's terms to be reasonable. And I'm using air quotes because in the lens of the, hundreds and hundreds of terms of services that I have read, I understand why these are drafted the way that they are because I pointed out all the bad stuff to you guys. And I'm like, look, you do have to understand that they do all kinds of stuff. They indemnify themselves. So you have to pay their attorney's fees if things happen. Like, there's standard boilerplate language things that go into these contracts. And they do make them one-sided because, not to say that they don't care about you, but they really care about themselves. All right. And you don't get to negotiate this. And, the stuff that that annoys me, including with DistroKid's terms, is that they have limitations of liability. So it makes it practically impossible for you to get a real remedy if you had to sue. And this applies pretty much across the board, right? So for everyone that we've looked at thus far, everyone puts in this limitation of liability that says something to the effect of, even if you sue us, even if we're found liable, and there is a judgment rendered against us, the very most money that you could get would just be the amount either in CD Baby's terms of service, it was $100 across the board with everyone else. It's usually something like the amount that we paid you. So if you were paid $500, whatever that amount is, like that's the cap. And so things like that, safeguard companies because it just makes it so it's like basically impossible for them to, really lose, right? And then they have you waive things like your attorney's fees. So like you hire me, we sue them, and you pay me $50,000, $100,000, and we win. But then in the contract, it said, well, even if you win, you only get the $5,000, which is the amount that we paid you, but you don't get your attorney's fees. Do you see what I'm saying here? I'm here just to be like, look, we see you, music distributors. And I'm really hopeful and excited that, someone's going to step up, because my problem here is not like, private companies can't put forth what they want. Like, it's your company. Cool. But my problem is that because the way that the music business is structured, in order to get your music on music platforms, you have to go through a music distributor. And so that puts everyone else in a very disadvantaged position in that you have to just agree. And so then someone really is working off their butt and they're paying for ads and they're making music and they're really trying to do this the right way. And then something happens. Just read the comments on any of my videos. And for those of you who, do unfortunately run into a problem, you're like, oh my gosh, there was like some kind of glitch or something happened. We talked with Ben Jordan, who also had, I think it was 23 albums taken down without notice and allegations of this and that. It's just very frustrating. So that's why I am taking time to really focus on this stuff, because it is my experience that the person or company that yells the loudest and for the longest is the one that actually implements change. And I guess that's what we're trying to do here. So guys, if you want to read more on the DistroKid terms of service, I will make sure to link that for you so you can actually go through the whole thing. But I've covered CD Baby, I've covered TuneCore, and if there's a particular distributor that you would like me to cover, make sure you leave a comment down below.